Welcome. We're ready to go? Yes. Welcome, everyone, to the meeting of the San Rafael City Council. Today is Monday, December 1st, and I will ask the city clerk to call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy. Present. Councilmember Hill.
Present.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Present.
Councilmember Yedenskulati. Present. Mayor Kate.
Present. Thank you so much. We met in closed session. I invite the city attorney to report out on that session.
There's no action. The closed session is going to resume after the regular meeting.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone, and welcome, whether you're here in person or joining us online. We are glad to have you. I'd like to start out with a quick shout out to our incredible city staff. They are behind everything in this city, from filling potholes, reviewing permits, to responding to emergencies and answering your questions. You can help them help you by also reporting issues through See-Click Fix. There's a link right on the city homepage. It's the same system that the council uses and the best way for staff to hear about an issue quickly. In addition, if you want to stay in the loop on what's coming before the city council, the planning commission, or other city boards, I encourage you to subscribe to the city manager's bi-monthly newsletter. It's called The Snapshot, and it's one of the best ways to stay informed and engaged, and you can also find that on our city website. So before we begin our business meeting tonight, we also include a land acknowledgement. This statement complements the ongoing collaboration and work that we do with the tribe on an ongoing basis. We thank the original caretakers of this land. San Rafael is traditionally home to the Coast Miwok people, many of whom today are tribal citizens of the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria, and we honor their continuing involvement in stewardship practices that benefit us all. I'll now turn it over to the city clerk, who can share how residents can participate in tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and streamed live to YouTube. For members of the public wishing to provide public comment, displayed on the podium and the projector is a timer to help you stay within the 2-minute time frame. You're invited, though not required, to introduce yourself and say what part of San Rafael you live in, or if you're from outside of San Rafael. Viewers may request a reasonable accommodation to provide public comments virtually. For more information about that, or if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, you can email me at city.clerk@cityofsanrafael.org. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with the city manager and council member reports. I will turn to city manager Christine Ililovich.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council and community. I just wanted to give an update on 350 Marydale. Last Monday, the Marin County Superior Court ruled in the city's favor, which allowed the city to proceed with the acquisition of the 350 Marydale property. We were able to successfully close on the property last Wednesday. Also wanted to announce the next community meeting, which is on Tuesday, December 9th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. That's going to be at Venetia Valley School multi-purpose room. Both city and county staff will be there. There'll be a short presentation about the project, and then some small groups will be facilitated specifically to hear feedback on the draft Good Neighbor policy and the interim shelter site layout and design. There'll be another meeting in January to follow up and share back with the community how we're responding to that feedback and continue the conversation. I also wanted to announce nominations are open for the 2026 Public Service Award. The city recognizes a member of the community every year for their contributions in making San Rafael an amazing place to live and or work. Submissions are due February the 6th of 2026. You can fill out an online submission form at citysanrafael.org/public service award. A few more upcoming events. There's Second Friday Art Walk is on Friday the 12th from 5 to 8. Lots of open studio and art exhibits through downtown San Rafael. Then we have the 2025 San Rafael Lighted Boat Parade with our police department, which is always super fun, December 13th from 6 to 9 p.m. along the San Rafael Canal. Rain or shine, so beautifully decorated boats will parade through the San Rafael Canal twice this year. And downtown menorah lighting in Geltrop is on the 21st of December, 5 to 6:30 p.m. at the San Rafael City Plaza on 4th Street. Please bring a non-perishable food item to donate. That's all I've got tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn to the vice mayor.
Thank you. Last week, along with the mayor, I participated in the board meeting for the San Rafael Sanitation District. We also met in closed session after that to discuss our strategic planning and strategic efforts. Today, along with Councilmember Lorenz Galati, I participated in the Marin Transit Board meeting, and there we heard the final plan for implementing the mascot changes that has been slightly modified from the original one brought forward affecting San Rafael. We will be retaining the bus route 36 and not making the changes that were proposed at the moment. But as part of the project for the new facility on East Francisco, there's going to be an extraordinarily robust and well-funded community outreach effort that will include creating basically an academy of residents in the canal area to become sort of compensated advisors to marine transit. So it will help with not only the community benefits that will come from that building, but also to have feedback on the proposed changes in the routes that originate in the canal area, where we were reminded today 1/3 of the ridership of marine transit originates in. So that completes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Kurtz.
No items to report.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. I have a few meetings to report. I was not here last time, so it's going back into earlier in November. I had attended the Tuesday, November 4th meeting of the Finance Subcommittee, which are actually appearing on our agenda this evening on the annual financial report as well as first quarter estimate. Participated in the interim shelter project open house at Osher Marin JCC. And then on Wednesday, 11/12, participated in the city council treat. And those were my reported meetings for November.
Thank you. Councilmember Lorenz Galati.
Thank you, Mayor. I participated with Mayor Kate in the ad hoc subcommittee meeting regarding the Star Weather Path in Spinnaker and Bay Point area. So also participated with Mayor Kate in the Police Department Service Recognition and Promotional. So that was really exciting to see all our police force being recognized. Participated in the Thanksgiving in the Canal. Actually, Councilmember Kurtz was there, and we were invited by Voces del Canal and the amazing service that they do there. So that was really sweet. And right after, I went to the MCE Clean Energy Board of Directors meeting. That lasted a long time. And there's going to be a new finance committee for MC Clean Energy. So we didn't have one. We had the executive committee and the technical committee. So now there's going to be a third one. Last Saturday, I participated in the Winter Wonderland on Shop Small Saturday. I was able to hit the switch to turn on the lighting on the tree, and it was just so fun to see like all the kids' faces. They had a singer that it was unbelievable. I thought it was almost like Mariah Carey, but anyway, it was really fun, and I really look forward to these events every year. I've been attending since I can remember, 20 plus years, and really encourage our community to shop local and shop small. Thank you, the city, Stacy, and the Chamber of Commerce for putting it together. Mary Beth gave a really good update on Marine Transit Board meeting this morning. And right after that, we had an MC Clean Energy Executive Committee meeting. So it's been busy. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just add or provide updates on two of the meetings that I attended as representative of the city of San Rafael. One was SMART, also known as the Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit. Ridership, I always like to give out ridership numbers. So October of 2024, it is up 24% from the year previously, so over October 2023. The ridership numbers around 120,000 for that month. It's the 7th straight month of over 100,000 riders. Smart Connect, which you may recall is the one, Connect is in Larkspur to the ferry, and then there's also one up near the airport in Santa Rosa. It's up 100% over last October, which isn't surprising being that it was a new service a year ago. In addition, we had a presentation on our financials. There was a clean audit that was provided by the accounting firm. We had two other items on our meeting. One is the Redwood Bike Show. I don't know if you've seen in San Rafael the bikes. There's some right outside City Hall. There's some over by the SMART station. That is a pilot program that is connected to SMART, also being funded by the Transportation Authority of Marin. And they provided an update. There's been 3,000 unique riders. They averaged 2 miles every time they ride the bike. There are 300 bikes with 56 hubs, so they're going to continue to provide information as to the uptick and the usage by the community. And then the final item at SMART was Clipper 2.0. If you ride SMART or the ferry, the card that you use is called a Clipper card. And Clipper 2.0 is going to be launched December 10th, which is in a week and a half. And it's moving the data from a cloud to the card. So you'll be able to use your credit card to tap on and off as opposed to having to go to an app. So they're trying to make it more seamless and frictionless. The one thing to note, though, they haven't quite gotten all of the logistics or the nuances of it completed. If you use your credit card, it's going to charge you the full adult fare. So don't give it to your teenager, don't give it to a student, because then it would be the full fare. But that is the first step in the phasing, and I will continue to provide an update as that program unfolds. And then secondly, I'm your representative on the Transportation Authority of Marin. We had an update on Draft Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus. Literally, they just gave an update as to all the different aspects. Plan Bay Area covers everything from transit to housing, and it's a big lift, this regional planning. And then the other program that we learned about or got an update on was the Alternative Fuels Program update, which has to do with EV chargers and how alternative fuels, other than fossil fuels, are being implemented and supported in our community. So as many of these meetings, you're all available online to watch. They are all recorded if you want to get more details on any of them. So thank you as always for what you all do between the meetings. We always accept comments from the public on our agenda items, and this one item is no different. So if you'd like to comment on the city manager and or the council member report, now is your opportunity, and you're welcome but not required to say your name and what part of San Rafael that you live in. Oh, you're already there. Wait, hold on. There you go.
Ken Dickinson, San Rafael Meadows, Mayor, council members, staff. This is just a clarification question to the city manager. You had mentioned that 350 Merridale had closed last Wednesday. Does that mean closed escrow and the city owns the building now? Would that be correct? The reason I want to bring this up is the fence has already been opened at 350 Merridale, so people are moving in and out of there. It's the fence at the front in the parking lot. There's also people sleeping in the redwood trees just to the left of there, and also in the Caltrans section behind the 350 Merridale. So if the city now does own the property, I thought you would want to know that the fence has been opened and people are going in and out of the property there. I can imagine why, because of the weather, but it's possible they could have broken in the back of the building. They have in the past broken in the front of the building. If you go by there, you will see plywood up for the various windows that have been broken down in the past. And a lot of the building inside has been affected. But if it's possible to send somebody out there, if we now own it, I think it would be advisable to do that. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I'll have the city manager respond to any questions. And thank you for sharing your observations on the site.
Good evening. Excuse me, did you just say that the city manager will answer questions?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
public input, there's input, and there are any questions, then I'll defer to city staff to respond as they see to be appropriate.
Thank you very much. My name is Gregory Andrew. I live in San Rafael Meadows, and on the city manager's report talking about closing last Wednesday, that was November 26th. We had been hearing that December 2nd was the closing date, and sort of urgency, desperation from the city to be able to close on the 2nd, but now we just learned that you closed on the 26th. So I'd like to have an explanation for that timeline. Thank you. And then kind of three items all combined to you, Mayor Kate, and to you, Councilmember Bushy. I believe you said you're on a transit board, and Mayor Kate, you're on SMART and TAM. My comment is that I hope that you will bring to those boards the issue of security around 350 Marydale. You have heard that there's areas of jurisdiction that are the city, the SMART and Caltrans separate. They don't necessarily talk to each other. So we really are going to need to have a hopefully an agenda item at these boards to discuss this particular issue for coordination of security, city, the SMART properties, SMART jurisdiction, and Caltrans jurisdiction. So I do hope that you will bring that topic to your respective boards. Thank you very much.
Any other comments on the reports? Not seeing any, I will close the public comment and move to the consent agenda. And I did want to recognize that we did get a request from a member of the public to pull an item, and 100% there's public comment on the consent agenda, so you'll be able to provide comment on the agenda items. And I'll turn to the city attorney to also clarify around, I think the request was around consent item 4B.
Right. We haven't heard the comment yet, but we did get a letter from Mr. Andrew that I think he's invited to provide public comment at the start of the consent agenda. But would you like me to comment on Mr. Andrew's comments at this time?
Oh, wait, on the previous one. Oh, you're right, because I did talk about the closing escrow. I'm sorry, I was checking it off. So let's back up. If you could, one of you comment on the closed escrow, the date clarification.
We did close
Thank you.
escrow on the 26th last week, and we do own the building. And I talked to Mr. Dickinson earlier this afternoon, so the chief spiller is already aware and is sending folks out to make sure that the site is secured, and that if there's any folks sleeping there, that will be addressed promptly.
Okay, apologize. Thank you for catching me on that. Okay, now going forward, I was responding to, now on the consent agenda, that we received an email about a request to pull the item 4B, and if you could just speak maybe to the ordinance 2057 versus the previous ordinance.
Right. So let me speak to both the request to pull an item and the comments that Mr. Andrews made in writing. If there are any members of the public, including Greg Andrews, who wish to comment on the consent agenda, that would happen at the regular time when the mayor calls for comments on the consent agenda before asking the council whether any council members wish to pull any item from the consent agenda. And if no items are pulled, then the mayor can request a vote on the entire consent agenda. So I think to give Mr. Andrews and anybody else the opportunity to speak, and then for me to address any questions that arise after public comment on the consent agenda, if any. And I do plan to comment on the letter that he wrote, but I don't know that everyone in the room's had the benefit of reading it. So I would suggest you call for comment on the consent agenda at this time.
Okay, well, first let me see if there's any items that the council would like to pull. Looking to my left, looking to my right. Okay. So now I will open up the public comment on the consent agenda. So that is a calendar. That's items 4A through 4E. We welcome your questions and input on any of those items at this time.
Could I just ask for a clarification before I start, if you don't mind? Can we comment on 4A, 4B, 4C?
You have 2 minutes to comment on the agenda, on the entire consent calendar. Yes.
Okay, Ken Dickinson, San Rafael Meadows, Mayor, Council members. I'm here to speak about the November 17th minutes, because what they record and what the community experience feel like two different events. What the minutes don't show is how overwhelming the process was. The city released more than 500 pages of material, including a shelter crisis declaration, two ordinances, an $8 million grant agreement, a real estate purchase just 72 hours before the vote. For most residents, that made meaningful engagement impossible. But what troubles people even more is the emergency framing when you declare that immediate action is required to protect life and health. The public expects immediate action for people at risk right now. There was none. There was no winter shelter proposal, no short-term measures, no immediate relief. Every action taken that night was about spring and beyond. That contradiction, emergency language without emergency help, is why the public feels blindsided, and the press saw it too. Dick Spotwood's column on November the 25th said plainly that the city was moving too fast. Days later, on November 29th, the Marin IJ cartoon depicted residents being railroaded by a train labeled Tiny Home Village Plan. That wasn't satire, it was community sentiment. Trust comes from alignment between what the city says and what the city does. On November 17th, the city said there was an emergency, but didn't act like it for the people most in danger this winter. The minutes should reflect the true scope of that meeting, the emergency declaration, the lack of immediate relief, the back-to-back ordinances, the complexity of the actions, and the public reaction that followed. For the sake of transparency and credibility, please amend the minutes. Thank you.
Mayor and council members, good evening. My name is Jennifer Wallace and I live in San Rafael Meadows. I want to speak to the November 17th minutes because those minutes will become part of the city's permanent legislative history. And the way they're written now, they don't capture the pattern that any of us saw that night. What happened wasn't just a quick vote, it was a sequence, quick. 5 actions passed in rapid succession, all tied to 350 Marydale. The emergency declaration, 2 versions of the same ordinance, the $8 million grant, and the real estate purchase. And the packet with more than 500 pages of these materials appeared 72 hours before the meeting. That process, its speed and scale, is a key part of the story, and the minutes do not reflect that. Emergency authority was invoked for immediate action, but immediate action was entirely procedural. Nothing in the meeting addressed immediate winter safety issues. The emergency was used to accelerate approvals, not to address the emergency conditions described in the ordinance itself. It's not a political point, it's a procedural one. If emergency authority is used this way once, it can be used this way again, and the public deserves a record that accurately reflects how and why it was used. Even the Marin IJ saw this pattern and commented through various articles and political satire cartoons, too fast. When the outside observers consistently call out the same issue, speed and process, the minutes should reflect that this was not an ordinary night. I'm asking for amendments, not to undo anything, but so the historical record fully and accurately reflects what occurred. It's essential for transparency and it's essential for precedent. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Rayburn. I live in San Rafael Meadows. Mayor and council members, I'm speaking because the minutes from November the 17th did not convey how sufficient and unusual the meeting truly was. 5 major actions were approved in rapid succession: emergency declaration, 2 nearly identical ordinances, an $8 million grant, and a property acquisition. More than a dozen state codes were involved, yet the public had just 72 hours to review the 500 plus pages of material. But the core issue is the emergency framing. The urgency ordinance claimed immediate action was needed to protect life and death and health. And yet, at that meeting, no immediate winter protection was proposed for people who were outside right now. The emergency powers were used to accelerate the process, not to address the very emergency the ordinance invoked. Marin IJ comments Dick Spotswood criticized the city for moving too fast. The IJ cartoonist illustrated residents being railroaded, which we were. These actions from outside observers demonstrate that the public rightly saw November 17th as an extraordinary moment, and the minutes don't reflect that. The record must show the full context, the speed, the complexity, the emergency authority, and the absence of immediate winter measures. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council Member, and staff. My name is Marielle Nonestad from San Rafael Meadows. I'm speaking tonight because the draft minutes from November 17 do not reflect how that meeting felt for many of us who live here, or what was missing from the discussion. The city declared an emergency that night, saying there was imminent danger and that immediate action was needed. But when people hear the word emergency, they imagined immediate solutions, especially with winter approaching. They imagine beds, warming spaces, temporary options that keep people alive in the coldest months. But none of that was introduced, not even a placeholder. The emergency declaration did not translate into any emergency winter protection for the people living outside tonight. Everything was about long-term plans. Everything was about next spring. For residents, this is where trust breaks down. When the words and the actions don't match, and when 500 pages of material appear 3 days before the meeting, including 2 nearly identical ordinances, a major grant agreement, and a full property acquisition, it feels like the public isn't being included, just informed after the fact. The Marin IJ clearly picked up on how residents felt. Dick Spotwood warned that the city was moving too fast, and the November 29 cartoon showed Marydale neighbors being literally railroaded. The cartoon went viral locally because it captured, in one image, what many of us felt. Decisions on November 17 were made too quickly for the community to meaningfully participate. The minutes should reflect that the meeting was unusual in scale and timing and in the way emergency powers were invoked without emergency protection. The public deserves an accurate record of what actually happened and how extraordinary that night really was. Thank you.
Frank Mason, I'm from the Meadows community. I wanted to speak directly to you, Mayor, because I don't think you understand what you put our neighborhood through. I'm not angry or unreasonable man. I'm a good neighbor, someone who supports solutions for homelessness, someone who tries to trust local government. But the way you handled 350 Marydale pushed me and many others past any reasonable limit. From the beginning, Mayor, you blindsided us. You held press conference with helicopters overhead, officials lined up behind you, cameras rolling, celebrating a project that you had never told the neighborhood about. This wasn't leadership, this was theater. And it was foreshadowing everything that followed, the secrecy, the rushing, the decisions already made in closed sessions. We had to file an injunction to stop you from signing the contract after the vote. And instead of listening or even pausing, you pushed the judge to push down every option we had so that we didn't even get a single day to appeal their decision. You stopped us completely, took every right from us. That wasn't transparency. That was power being used to silence people. And yes, it felt authoritarian. And at times it felt like a Trump-style approach, where the decision comes first, the public is an obstacle, and the process is just for show. I want you to understand something personal last time. I was so shaken by the tone in this room, the disrespect of the city attorney, the feeling of being talked down to, that I could barely speak. I'm not proud of that moment, but it happened because I felt unheard, bulldozed by the people elected to represent me. And the final blow was Councilmember Kurtz reading a prepared statement right after public comments, proving nothing we said mattered. The decision was made long before we arrived. So Mayor Kate, I ask you once again, why do you do it this way? Why take a project with real potential and launch it in the most divisive, secretive, heavy-handed way possible?
You could finish your comments, please, Mr. Mason. Your time is up.
Give us a real voice going forward, not a symbolic committee, not a checkbox meeting, a genuine ongoing role in oversight and communication.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment on the city manager reports?
I think you misspoke, Mayor. You mean consent agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Consent calendar. Yes.
Good evening, Gregory Andrews, San Rafael Meadows, and as discussed and for the record, I did submit a request to pull item 4B from the consent calendar. Now, I know that I can't pull it. I know that only you, Mayor, and council members or staff can pull it, so I put in that request. But by your actions here tonight, my request has been denied. I know I can comment, but I asked for presentation, information, discussion, public comment, and a vote. That's been denied. So I submitted a written comment on item 4B. I'm not going to review it all other than just say that ordinance 2057 gives global power to the city manager to place a homeless shelter anywhere, anytime, without public comment, without even the city council's input, and without regards to environmental laws. You know, I want to change gears for just a second and talk about over the last 6 weeks, I've interacted with a number of elected officials, yourselves and others, and staff. And through that, I want to give recognition to, I know everybody doesn't agree with me, but I want to give recognition and appreciation to Attorney Epstein and to City Clerk Laura, who have shown me they have integrity as well as a good demeanor. Certainly a nicer demeanor than I have, right? You know, when I was pulling in here, I parked and there was a gentleman walking towards Fifth Street, and it was clear that he's homeless. And I looked at him and I thought, you know, you're not the problem. You need help and compassion. The problem is you, Mayor and council members. I do not trust you, and I hope you hear that. Thank you.
Any other comments on the consent agenda? Not seeing any. I'll close the public comment. I didn't know if the city attorney or city manager there were quite a few comments about minutes or
Yeah, I'll
anything.
make some comments. City manager's always invited to comment, but I'll actually, after I conclude my remarks, invite the city clerk if she wishes to add anything to comment, because she, our beloved city clerk, is the one responsible for preparing the minutes following city council meetings. I'll start with a little history. When I first started here, and our beloved city clerk was the late beloved Jean Leoncini, we had verbatim minutes. They were really long. They had like every single word that anybody said at the meetings, and that was before we had that thing that transcribes everything. And so I think it was when Esther became city clerk that we concluded the practice of having verbatim minutes, because it was not the prevailing practice statewide among the 440 or so California cities, not even close. And at that time began the practice which we continue today, which is minutes that reflect action taken at the meeting. That's the purpose of them, to show action at the meeting. With regard to a record of the proceedings at the meeting, and I think this was actually coincident with the change we made to the minutes, it was right around when we started doing video. And we recognized that along with these, I'll call them abbreviated action minutes, we would also have a permanent video record of every single city council meeting. And we do. And that is something that we'll continue to keep as long as the internet's working. You can look online and look up and watch any meeting, see what people look like, appreciate how it felt, in the words of some of the speakers tonight, to the extent you can get that from a video. But it isn't the purpose of the minutes, and given the really the weight and burden of the responsibilities that the city clerk's office operates under, I can't imagine what it would be like for them to continue that practice today, along with responding to Public Record Act requests and all the other things that they do. So I have some remarks to make about Greg Andrews' letter that he wrote. He didn't comment on it tonight, but concerning ordinance 2056 and 2057. But before I do that, I just want to invite Lindsay. Was there anything about my comments about the minutes you wanted to add to?
You did a wonderful job. And also, I would like to add just a couple things about minutes that are a little bit different than other items on the agenda. Oftentimes, anytime a member of the public wishes to see something different in an item before the city council, they can recommend a change, and then you can consider that change and then direct staff to make that change. The minutes is unique, that I'm the owner of the record. And so my job is to remain very neutral. For example, if a council member was to vote no and they said, for the record though, this is why I'm voting no, I will never include that in the record. It's specifically the action that's taken by the city council. So whether it's the sentiment of the feeling of the community or the feeling of the city council, I remove that entirely. The only thing that can actually be amended in the minutes is factual correctness. So if I wrote a 4-1 vote when it was really a 5-0 vote, that's the opportunity for the city council to say, actually, I made that motion, not Councilmember Hill. I would then correct that. If there was, say, for example, this evening, one of the members of the city council was to make a recommendation for me to include the comments that the public have provided, I would take that recommendation merely as a recommendation, and then ultimately I would determine whether or not that was inside or outside of your scope as the body of the city council, and then keep that legislative history to be the way that I perceived it and watched the video and learned it. And the reason I do that is just to make sure that that history is completely neutral for 100 years from now, for 10 years from now. So you're kind of, you don't have the same ability with the minutes that you do with every other agenda item that's on the agenda. So that's the only added nuance, I would say, in addition to your comments.
Thanks, Lindsay. Now I want to speak to the other comments that Mr. Andrews made in writing, and also to a comment he made here tonight about how items are pulled from the consent agenda. This is with respect to ordinance number 2056, an urgency ordinance, and then ordinance number 2057, which is pointed out at the podium, essentially replicates it. That's standard practice where we, when adopting an urgency ordinance, will also adopt an ordinance in the regular fashion, which is as council's aware, a 2-meeting process where the ordinance is introduced at the first meeting with a staff report, both written and oral, and then the ordinance appears for adoption at the subsequent meeting. And there is no staff report accompanying the presentation of the ordinance for adoption at the second meeting, because unless something's changed, which it wouldn't, unless it was a grammatical change or some sort of a typographical error, otherwise we'd have to introduce the ordinance all over again. The adoption is the same ordinance that was reported on at the first meeting. So that's why there's no new staff report, and that's why we are recommending adoption tonight of 2057, which, as again pointed out, essentially replicates 2056. With respect to Greg Andrews' point about pulling items from the consent agenda, it is correct that the city council governs whether an item is pulled from the consent agenda, or staff, oftentimes to make a correction, might request to pull an item, or sometimes city manager will pull an item because maybe she wants a department director to come in and report on developments or such. But when I conclude my remarks, which you'll be happy to hear will happen in about 15 seconds, the city council can consider everything that I've said and consider what was stated at the podium. And then I'd suggest, Mayor, you can ask again whether that changes anybody's mind, whether anybody wishes to pull an item. And if so, you could do it at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Following the city attorney's recommendation, would the council like to pull any items from the consent agenda? Not seeing any. I would entertain a motion on this item, please.
I move that we adopt the consent calendar item for A through E.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Yeden Scolati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. We're going to move on to our next agenda items. It's the 2025-2027 3-year pavement management plan. And I see Director Miller and Gray joining us. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Kate, council members. My name is Gray Melgard. I'm a senior civil engineer with the Department of Public Works. I'm also the paving manager for the city for the pavement management program. Tonight's item is the 3-year pavement management. It falls in line with fiscal year 25 through 28 strategic plan, item B14, which is executing a comprehensive PMP pavement management program to maintain our road quality within the city of San Rafael at a fair pavement condition index, which I will talk a little bit about in the next slide. As of 2024, the city's pavement condition index, or PCI, is at a 61. That is in the fair category according to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's 2024 Pavement Condition of Bay Area Jurisdictions Report. It's a mouthful. But before we talk too much about the plan, I did just want to give a little bit of background about the city of San Rafael's network. So the city of San Rafael manages approximately 173 center line miles of roadway. That's 333 lane miles. And when we're talking about the health of our roadways, we're typically talking about a roadway's PCI, or pavement condition index, which is a snapshot of each individual roadway at a given point in time. And what we're looking at is from a scale of 0 to 100, the type, severity, and extent of distress that that roadway could be facing. So potholes, cracking, alikes. 0 is a failed and or very poor road. 100 is a brand new, it's never been driven on, touched, anything like that. So that's the 0 to 100 scale. So like I said before, San Rafael is sitting at a 61. Marin County as an aggregate community is at a 69. Bay Area is at a 67. And then California overall is at a 66. So preservation, pavement preservation 101, is this idea of applying the right treatment to the right pavement at the right time. City of San Rafael's focus has been in recent years on preservation. This image in the lower left hand shows the degradation of our roadways over time. So pavement condition is on the left, time is on the x-axis on the bottom. And you'll see the black line as it kind of curves down in that S fashion will eventually re-trigger a major rehabilitation effort to fix a roadway. $6 to $8 per square foot. It's more expensive, it's more costly, versus a pavement preservation action, which is that blue line. More frequent, but helps maintain that pavement in a higher category, higher quality at a lesser cost to the city. So that is that preservation that the city has been focusing on. So here's a history, just the past 4 fiscal years, from 21 up to last year, 24-25. So the city has invested right around $6 million in our major pavement maintenance projects. We've impacted about 43 center line miles. That's about 25% of our network. And impacted over 920,000 square yards across various neighborhoods throughout the city. I will say that this is not the only paving work that the city does. We also have paving work that's associated with other projects outside of the program itself. So Grand Avenue Cycle Track, 3rd Street was its own project that had paving elements. There's more than just this, but these are kind of the major big projects that we see. So now into the 3-year pavement management plan, the most exciting part of my job. So this is an aggregate, it's a strategic plan document that is really providing the framework for the city to work with agencies, utility groups, residents. It gives a full network inventory of the city and any field assessment results from that. The overall goal of the plan is to maintain an alignment with the strategic plan, is to maintain the PCI of the network over the next 3 years. It also provides the framework and the groundwork for the 5-year pavement management plan. So this is years 1 through 3, and then developing years 4 and 5. So maps, so fiscal year, we're working in fiscal years, not calendar years. So fiscal year 25-26, we are in the Terra Linda neighborhoods. This also includes implementation of the Safe Routes to School project that's along Nova Albion Way. That's a grant-funded project, so the program would also implement that project in conjunction. Some other things I want to just take a note of is with these projects, we are looking to have additional striping enhancements with each of them. So high visibility, those green sharrows. Here's an image in the middle bottom along 1st Street from last year's project, and also high visibility crosswalks. 27 roads, fiscal year 27 roads, we're in Montmarin. Center Street is getting some love, and then Peacock Gap as well. Separately, I wanted to point out we do have another project that's outside of the program, and that is a joint project with the County of Marin. That is the Point San Pedro Road Slurry Project. So that will be a separate category outside of these general roads. And then 28, we're over in Anderson, East San Rafael, and Bret Harte neighborhood. All of these maps and documents are going to be up to date on the website, the pavement website. So if anyone needs to zoom in, find their street or nearby, those will be made available. So by the numbers, every year that passes, each mile of our network loses 1 year of its life. So in order to sustain our network, we have to provide our network with approximately 333 lane mile years, LYM, of treatment or preservation to keep that PCI. So 2025 estimated costs 1.8 million. Our estimated net lane mile years is 11. Same thing, 26, 2.3. We're gaining 66 years, lane mile years. And then 2027, we're at 2.2 and a loss of 3.3. Overall, the 3-year plan, we're looking at a gain of 74 lane mile years. So what's next? We continue to coordinate with all of our annual programs. So our sidewalk repair program, our corrugated metal pipe repair program, hillside, road safety. This plan also allows coordination, as I said before, with our transit groups, our sanitation agencies, PG&E, water districts, just to give them an idea of where the city is going to be so that we can kind of plan with each other on implementation of projects. Continue to explore stretching the dollar as much as we can. There are grant opportunities available for paving projects, building more transparency into the process, and then also optimizing our in-house maintenance efforts, which, Mayor Kate, you said it before, I'll say it again, See Click Fix is the best place to let us know about things around the city. It allows DPW to respond to any safety concerns and maintains that transparency and accountability. And of course, it allows us to track areas that are maybe getting some more attention if there's more substantial repair that's needed in those areas. There's a QR code if anyone's interested in scanning that. That's my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'm sure there'll be questions. Vice Mayor, any questions?
Yes. On behalf of my constituents who are desperately interested in the details of this, could you be very specific about where they should go to look for the exact status of their street?
So the pavement website with the city, it's City of San Rafael /pavement, or I think paving will get you there as well, will have an interactive map that you can zoom in. It's similar to the County of Marin's. You can click on the road. It will tell you what year it is scheduled for, and it will tell you what treatment is scheduled for that road. I will put the caveat in that each of these projects is subject to council action for the actual contract, but that is what the plan will be. That will be made available for anyone to go take a look at.
So go to our website, search for pavement, and you'll be able to find your street. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 5 questions, but I might have more depending on the response. So in the staff report, I noticed 61 and 62, depending on which place I looked on our PCI. Do you know which one is accurate, or if I'm looking in the wrong place? Because I'm seeing 2 different numbers.
It is 61 as of 2024.
Okay, I did see a table where it's listed as 2024, 61, but I'm hearing, or 62, but I'm hearing that 61 is the right one.
Yes, can double check on
But yeah, maybe take a look and just clarify. It's one off, but I just want to make sure it can make a difference because you can fall pretty under fair pretty quickly if you're at 61.
Yeah, so I'm going to add into that. So one of the programs that's available to the City of San Rafael is PTAP, Pavement Technical Assistance Program. It's hosted by MTC, Metropolitan Transportation Commission. They come in with a consultant and basically reevaluate the entire network with like AI tools, and we get a much more detailed look at all of our PCIs. So the number 61, which I think is 2024, is just more of an aggregate from MTC. We will get more kind of detailed breakdowns on our numbers. We were awarded that last year. It will start in January. So that is upcoming, but I'm pretty sure it's 61 based on the 2024 report.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, and this goes into the bullet that just says build transparency. When I think of transparency as it relates to PCI, I get the sense that, you know, in comments that we've received from the public, both in these chambers and even just directly, I think people are interested in, you know, how do we model this? Because I can sit here and hear and appreciate this ultimately comes down to the constraint of math. And we want to make certain that we can preserve roadways so it doesn't fall to a certain point. I think ultimately that is the right way to think about it. But it doesn't necessarily help a community member who's looked at their street for, say, 10 years and said, wow, this is really falling apart. I'll just take a specific example. A lot of folks in the hillside have concrete roads, which are very expensive, but sometimes the right thing to do on hillside areas. But it might be 50 years between a full concrete replacement. So I think that when we think about transparency, or maybe you can provide a comment. Is that what you're thinking about when you're thinking about transparency, is to provide more insight into how that conceptual formulation is applied to reality?
Asking for clarification in terms of like how roads are decided, transparency, or like,
Or even the model that you might be using, just to say, well, how in any given year do we say what goes above the line or below the line to fit inside of the budget that we have? I think is the concept that I'm hearing. And I'm sure there's a lot of interest in the public to say, is my street or the streets that I'm interested in going to fall above the line or below?
Yeah, so it kind of comes back to that pavement preservation 101. There may be roads in similar geographical areas that are good candidates for something like a slurry, that the road next door might not be such a good candidate. And so it is there's a lot that goes into it, but it is, and I think the plan kind of details how we go through that process. But there is, geographical location, right pavement, right treatment, right time. There's also the conversation around ADA compliance. Some treatments are restrictive of if we have upgraded ramps in the area. So that's part of the conversation as well. If a road can even accept something like a microservice. Anything to add?
Thank you. And the math went by really fast, but what I saw was, and it seemed like good news, that we're achieving in some cases a plus 74 on the miles. But that I also saw that in order to even just stay status quo, we need to hit 333. Did I interpret that correctly?
Yes, you did interpret that correctly. So
Okay.
as part of our PTAP report that we get, they estimate how much money we need to spend on roadways in order to maintain our PCI. We don't spend enough money to maintain our PCI, so we're stretching our dollars every way we can, which is why we're doing these kind of more creative solutions on different types of slurry seals. We're doing like 3-layer lifts, so more than one lift to help hold those roads together for as long as we possibly can, because we just don't have enough money to maintain it, but we're doing everything we can to try to.
Certainly. And I think I take your testimony that we are exercising every bit of our cleverness to ensure that we are expending every dollar correctly. But moving to the other part of the math, what I'm also seeing is that we're about 4x, we need 4x of our current spend in order to even get to that 333, which equates to just maintaining our current PCI. Did I get that right?
Yes,
Okay.
it's not completely 4 times, but yes.
That order of magnitude. Okay, thank you for confirming that. And then this goes to the C-click fix. And I've used this, but I've also directed community members who've asked to say, hey, there's a pothole, can you do this? And my immediate response, and it's the right response. And by my own testimony, I'll say that city staff, Public Works, does go out and assess and then do repairs if depending on the condition. And I will just say that having used that myself, I've seen that it does request that the reporter indicate, how deep is the pothole, how wide is the pothole, and then staff can go and confirm. And I've noticed that, I'll get to the question, but I've noticed that staff does repair these potholes in a pretty timely manner. So I guess my question is are there certain instances, because I've never seen it happen this way, that they would deny a pothole that can be replaced if it's the right dimension, or is there a wrong dimension that you would not get a replacement or repair rather?
Yeah, I don't think there's a dimension that wouldn't necessarily that we wouldn't repair. I think it's just what we can do, because like especially during the winter, we'll do cold patches, which do not last very long, but it's not warm enough for us to pave. So we put in some cold mix to hold the pothole until we could get around to the spring when it warms up and we can actually do a small patch, a couple feet by a couple feet, and our crews can do that. But I think they just want to assess what they need to throw in their truck to know what they can fix.
Thank you. And I want to acknowledge on my own question that it seems very tactical, but to a lot of folks in our community who use the roads every day as either a driver, a cyclist, or a pedestrian, it can be very, very important to folks. So thanks for entertaining and indulging my question about potholes.
Councilmember Urans-Galati.
Yes, thank you. So I was just thinking like streets like on Anderson Drive and also Lincoln, Du Bois. We have like big industries around the neighborhood. We have Shamrock, and every day they go with the big trucks. And so the roads are pretty beaten up. So, and I think I have mentioned this before. Do they pay like an extra tax to fix the roads? Or is there something that we can do around that? Because the other day I was driving, I would drive through that every day because it's my neighborhood. And there was like a lot of gravel on the ground. So, and I know that is the potholes specifically, as you can fix it as quick as you can, but there are always like a lot of potholes that bikers, I know some of my friends have actually fallen down. So I'm just curious to see if maybe it's a source of revenue where they are like, is clear that is the trucks that they are come out of those places.
Not specifically for a business like Shamrock. But like we do collect fees for like construction. Like if Shamrock was going to a construction site, we do have construction impact fees that the developer pays that go into our roadways. So that's another way we get funding, but not just from them leaving. It's specifically for construction projects.
So will that's when the project is in San Rafael, or?
Yeah, when it's in San Rafael.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the times they just go Anderson and then take the 101. So anyway, well, that was a thought that I was thinking like, I wonder. The other one is I wonder around sea level rise, and I know that's like a very complicated topic, but how is the impact around sea level rise? And I guess more like a thought as we come up with solutions for sea level rise. I know that you're working very closely with our sustainability department, but maybe you can speak a little bit around planning for that, or what is the effect of sea level rise on our roads?
Well, I guess bringing it back to the pavement management program, since our focus is specifically on pavement maintenance, we're not raising or lowering the road at all. It's a very thin layer lift. So as far as sea level rise, it's the project budget can't take into account sea level rise because we're just trying to maintain the pavement itself. When we do work with sea level rise, it's on other things, like we're doing the feasibility of the canal crossing bridge. So we'll look at how sea level rise can be incorporated with that project, or when we're replacing seawalls and things like that. Or if we had to, if we did do work on like the levees out at Starkweather Path and stuff, if we would look at raising those. But for this program itself, all we're doing is doing slurry seal to try to keep the pavement in its current condition.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm thinking with when PG&E is coming to do the underground lines in the canal, will that be just like basically repaving again, or is there like anything, and that's in the future? I mean, I don't know if it's going to be in the next 10 years, but are we thinking about that, or is too early?
So the Canal Neighborhood Rule 20A PG&E ungrounding project is in conjunction with the Canal Active Transportation Enhancements project. So those two projects are working together, and there is a component of specifically sea level rise conversation that's associated just with that project in general. In terms of paving, I don't think the specifics over restoration have been kind of ironed out. We're still working with PG&E on limits for that, but definitely part of the conversation for the project in terms of restoration.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Kurtz.
Thank you for the update. This is always good news.
I have two questions. The first one is there in the Terra Linda area, there's neighborhood lore about different street markings, not bike paths, not just having slow written down and some general, and then it was paved over and never came back. Is it possible to bring some of that back as the pavement process is happening?
So the short answer is yes. It requires, as we are looking at this plan, conversations with our traffic division on what is up to standard, up to code, and just making sure that we're in alignment with our state regulations. And I think ultimately our traffic division has that conversation with them on what's necessary, required in terms of additional pavement markings, but that is something that could be implemented by the program.
Okay, great. That's good. And then can you walk through the general communication plan? So when it's identified that a street or area is going to be done, how do you communicate to the community around that timing?
Yeah, so the benefit of having 3 years in advance means that we can start communicating now. I'm not sure if anyone wants to hear from me 3 years in advance, but so notices will be going out to especially years 1 and 2 to residents who potentially could be impacted, letting them know that their street has been identified as a needed for preservation. This is also kind of where our alignment with our sewer districts helps. So if anyone needs to replace their sewer lateral, so that communication will probably go out, if not by the end of this month, probably by the start of next year, just as an FYI. And then we also have communication with each individual project each year that will kind of remind them this project is happening. This is what the impacts could be to parking, traffic, all of that. And that would be closer to when each road project was actually happening. In addition, our website is staying up to date, this plan being available. And thank you, Director Miller. So this plan was given and presented to BPAC. So we got comments from that group as well. And then I think I don't know if each individual project, likely each individual project for each of the 3 years will likely end up going back to BPAC, which is Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. So
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And I just have follow-up questions, and I think you already answered this one, building on what Councilmember Micah was talking about. We are a major thoroughfare on 3rd Street, and we did pave part of it, but as you get closer down to the freeway, is there an ability to work with other jurisdictions? Because it's the traffic from our neighboring communities that are using 3rd Street, and I don't know if TAM is a mechanism for doing that. I'm just curious if there's any model, or if it's within your city boundaries, it's your issue that you have to deal with. I'm just curious if there's any other counties that have been able to do that.
I haven't heard of any,
Okay.
but yeah, I can bring it up to the Transportation Authority in Marin. I sit on the technical advisory committee, and I can discuss, options and see if
That
there's
would
any
be-
ideas.
That would be fantastic, because for us, it's 3rd Street, but I think there are other communities that probably have a similar impact from neighboring jurisdictions.
We have more recently in the last couple of years worked with Marin Water and San Rafael Sanitation District on their joint projects, knowing when they're going to come in and tear up the roadway and do a cost share on the paving, which significantly helps. So we're really trying to partner with them more often so that at least we have some cost savings with those jurisdictions.
Yeah, no, that's helpful, and thank you, because I will also have that conversation at TAM, because again, we're probably not the only jurisdiction that has the impact from other communities driving through. And then the second question really is around the financials part of it. And as Councilmember Hill pointed out, and as I think struck all of us, we need 333 lane miles a year. The high point is going to be, not this year, but the next year, 66. So again, that delta is there. So in terms of the financials, and your staff report talked about 6.8 million to do the 333, those dollars are from the general fund, aren't they? Because when we say there's not enough money, they're not from the general fund. So where's the 1.5 that we have currently?
It comes from a lot of different sources. So
Okay.
we do have our gas tax. So there's lots of different types of gas tax. I don't remember the acronym for RMRA.
So Road Maintenance Rehabilitation Act, RMRA, funds that into gas tax 206. We also have
Uh,
HUTA.
Yeah, and then there's TAM has Measure A funding, or AAA funding that can also go towards roads. So there's a couple different funding sources, but no, it's not.
So it's not from the general fund, we're using these other funding sources. And and if I recall correctly, I think the gas tax dollars, because people are driving fewer, that there might be some issues of that gas tax dollars not being as big as they've been in the past. I don't know if that's true or not.
We haven't seen that
I
yet.
haven't seen that dip. Okay.
Yeah, we're still tracking slightly up each year.
Okay. So really, when I look at other jurisdictions, they go out and they do bonds or they ask taxpayers to pay more money in order to get that delta. Because again, we're trying to figure out the funding, if there's a way to increase it, other than if we use our general fund money, then we're taking money from our parks. I mean, there's always trade-offs. There's no money just sitting around.
Yeah, correct. The city of Larkspur a few years ago passed a huge tax measure where they said they were going to pave every single road within 5 years. So they have the top pavement condition index in the entire Bay Area because they just completed 5 years of paving. But that
Aren't
was
they
a
at,
tax measure.
like 20% the size of San Rafael? Again, I mean, because they were able to do that and they were able to have the outcome. I think even if our community, we were to do that, the amount that we would have to ask taxpayers would be so much bigger than what Larkspur residents had to do that I think it would be a very hard ballot measure to have people support. Okay. Thank you. There might be more questions that come up once we open up the public comment, which I'm going to do right now. If you'd like to comment on the 2025-2027 three-year pavement management plan, now is your opportunity. Not seeing anyone, I'm going to close the public comment and bring it back for additional comments before we have a motion. Actually, I'll just make a quick comment, might suffice. I do appreciate having that interactive map, but both the vice mayor brought that up. I think everyone on the dais brought that up, that enabling residents to go to find the information that they're looking for as to when their street's going to come up. And if it isn't, and to Councilmember Hill's previous comment about the concrete street, just as an aside, there was a concrete street that it took 10 years for us to put enough money into the CPI, I'm not CIP, Capital Improvement Program, to have enough money to do that paving. So it's not that the city's not interested, but there is long-term planning that goes along with it. So any other comments that folks would like to make? Yeah, Councilmember Hill.
Yeah, I think just that the focused metric that is cited here, and I think it's cited widely, is this pavement condition index, which at times can show up, I think, as a vanity metric, but I do think it's reflective of safety and throughput for various types of modalities. I think that this is a very strategic look at how can we stretch every dollar to do the right thing, and then how can we find more dollars availing the city for more grants. I appreciated the look at the fact that there are multiple sources that are not the general fund, and how can we obviously increase those. But I think we are constrained by physics and math, the dollars here. So thanks for the report, and appreciate the challenge that you are continuing to do on behalf of the community to make certain our roads are safe. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion unless anyone else wants to make a comment. Go ahead and make a motion. Councilmember Cruz.
Sure. Raise the motion to receive the informational plan and presentation.
Thank
Second.
you. Moved.
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Yeden Scalati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Director Miller. Thank you, Gray. The next item is the year-end audited financial statements and related audit reports. See Director Navazio joining us.
Mayor Kate, members of the council, we do this so frequently that I have to be reminded each time. I'm joined tonight at the staff table by Whitney Crockett, who's our lead partner and independent auditor with Mays and Associates, who conducted the audit. I'll give a brief introduction and then hand it over to Ms. Crockett. As noted, this agenda item is essentially the presentation to the council and the public of the year-end audited financial statements and the accompanying audit reports that go with it. We'll have a little brief presentation. And then I will also highlight some of the financial information contained in the audit. I'll note two things by way of setting the table for this. First of all, as far as the financial results, the council may recall that I believe at your September 22nd meeting, we provided unaudited financial results and had a presentation. There's not been really any significant changes between the unaudited and the audit report, so we'll hit the highlights without having to necessarily revisit all of the results. And secondly, as was noted in, I believe, Councilmember Hill's introductory comments, we did provide the Finance Subcommittee with a presentation on the draft audit as it was being completed back at the meeting of November 4th. And tonight we're here to address the full council. And with that, I'll hand it over to Whitney.
Oh, there we go. Okay, a little harder than I was doing. Good evening, everyone. My name is Whitney Crockett, and I'm an audit partner with Mays & Associates. We are the external independent auditors for the city of San Rafael, and I oversaw completion of the fiscal year ended June 30, 2025 audit. We are an independent CPA firm, so we're independent from the city and its component units. So that would be San Rafael Sanitation District. That's covered in the city's report as well. Our audit was conducted in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America and government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States of America. So our scope of the audit covers the city. So that is the annual comprehensive financial report, which is the first attachment in your packet. And then we also audit the child development program, and that has a separate financial report. Lastly, we also report on the GAN limit that's calculated each year just to recalculate what the cities determine the limit to be. So covering the results of the audit for the city's financial statements, our audit opinion is on page 1 of the annual comprehensive financial report. And I'm pleased to report to you that the city received an unmodified audit opinion, which is a clean opinion. That's the highest level of assurance that we can provide. So that's basically saying that the city's financial statements are materially represented. On page 5 of the financial statements is management's discussion and analysis. And this is prepared by finance staff, and it gives you an overview of what happened during the year. So changes in balances, activity, and anything that's relevant to the financial statements. So it's a good read if you want to get kind of a general overview of what happened. Oops, wait, did I skip one? Okay, wait, here we go. Okay. Another deliverable in your packet is the memorandum on internal control. And this is basically a memo from us to you with any internal control comments that we have. So there's 3 possible categories for comments. There's material weakness, which is the highest level of severity, and then significant deficiency, which is kind of moderate, and then other matters, which are more like housekeeping matters. So the city did have one other matter in 2025, and it had to do with purchasing policy compliance as it relates to informal bidding documentation. So what we found is we tested 25 disbursements during the year, and we assessed those disbursements against the city's purchasing policy, and we noted that the city wasn't able to provide supporting documentation for 2 disbursements related to the informal bidding process to substantiate that that was done. And so I know that in the packet, if you look at the actual comment, there's a management response in there. So the city has a plan to address this comment. And basically our recommendation for that was just to establish or reinforce procedures around the informal bidding processes across all departments to ensure compliance. So another piece of our audit is the required communications. And this is just highlighting some of the significant audit areas. So the first one is that there were changes in accounting policies related to GASB 101 and GASB 102. Those are governmental accounting standards. So the city did implement those 2 statements in fiscal year 2025. but they didn't have a material impact on the financial statements, so we just note that in there. The city didn't have any unusual transactions. We also outlined significant accounting estimates in that document. We didn't note any disagreements with management. There were no material adjustments or uncorrected misstatements to report. So just very standard language in that. And then another deliverable, like I mentioned before, we look at the GAN limit to make sure it's calculated correctly for fiscal year 25-26. We're always a year ahead on that particular calculation. And we did have one exception. The exception was not related to the actual limit that was calculated. It was more of verbiage in the resolution that was adopted. I think to be specific, the resolution said the change in the population of the city of San Rafael was selected for the calculation. But actually, if you do the calculation in worksheet, it was the larger adjustment factor of the change in the population of Marin County, which was the correct way to calculate it. It just wasn't what was noted in the resolution. Okay, let's see here. So childcare, results of the audit. Our independent audit report is on page 1 of that report. And pleased to report to you that that also had an unmodified or clean opinion, highest level of assurance that we can give the program. There's also an independent auditor's report in the back of that report on compliance specifically. And that's just to talk about our, audit opinion about the city's compliance with the state agreement for the child care program. And there's no current year findings in there, so it's also a clean opinion. Questions?
Thank you. I'll see if there are any questions. Not seeing any. Yeah, Councilmember Hill, go ahead.
I know it seems self-serving to ask you questions after we had the subcommittee meeting, but there was one point that was brought up that I would like to have maybe Director Navazio bring forward, which was the city of San Rafael will likely not get a bunch of medals or accolades in the Marin Independent Journal for having the findings that we received this evening. But Director Navazio, I did think that in the meeting, you did say that having a fact pattern of clean audits year over year does result in some benefits for a municipality. Can you comment on that, and are we in that category?
Sure, happy to. I think the absent of problematic audits is the benefit, if you will. So we always strive for a clean audit. Actually, don't necessarily take offense to findings to the extent that they can point out areas for improvement that we can address. Fortunately, they've been kind of in the low level category. But from a bigger perspective, I would say that the importance of having a pattern of both clean audits. I would add also in the ACFR, we represent certification from outside entities like the Government Finance Officers Association for Certificate of Achievement. Those are, in my opinion, pretty important, both sort of intrinsically, but specifically when the time comes for the city to approach the financial markets for any type of borrowing, like a future bond measure for a new library. Having a clean audit and clean books certainly helps with the credit rating and the rates at the time that we can obtain on any debt. That's probably the most tangible example I can give you.
Thank you. If I may, can I try to translate that into how I might hear that, which is that for the taxpayer that might approve a bond, that they can be assured that we would be in position to get better financial terms than if we were having more problematic audit statements.
Fair statement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any additional questions. I'll open up the public comment if you'd like to provide any input on the audited financial statement. Now's your opportunity. Not seeing anyone who'd like to comment. I will close the public comment and bring it back. And thank you, Whitney. I know that you have come here, I think, every year, and appreciate the work that you do with our finance department. And I want to thank the finance department for providing you the information that you need so you can have a report that is fit for public consumption. And I do want to point out, I was just revisiting, and you said this in your comment about in the beginning, about the describing San Rafael and the economic data, and it is such a great snapshot for residents to look at. And you mentioned that, and I know you mention that every year. It's a great read. It's like an executive summary of the financials and the economic trends and where our strengths are. So I just wanted to highlight that, and I appreciate you mentioning that. Okay. Not any comments. I would entertain a motion, Vice Mayor.
Just a quick comment. The fact that there is no controversy, that there are no audit issues is a sign of the competence of our finance team and the management team at the city, because this is the essence of good government, is how we spend taxpayer dollars. Although I think the Public Works got the emoji of the stretched dollar. That was pretty nice. With that as a preparatory comment, I move that we accept the fiscal year 2024-25 annual comprehensive financial report memorandum on internal control report of required communications, child development program financial report, and GAN appropriations limit report.
I'll second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Eden Scalati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much, Whitney. Director Navazio is not leaving because the next item is also within the Finance Department, fiscal year 2025-26 first quarter budget update.
Thank you again, Mayor Kate, members of the council. As noted, this item is entirely an informational item. It represents our ongoing effort to provide the council and the community with periodic, in this case, regular quarterly budget updates. What this report summarizes are the financial results through the first quarter of the current fiscal year, i.e. September 30th, 2025. It's essentially the same format that we've been presenting of late. Just a summary staff report, and then the attachment A has a series of tables that summarizes our all fund revenue, all funds expenditures by both type of expenditure and department, as well as general fund revenue results. There's hopefully not a lot of headline news in the first quarter report. The staff report again provides some of the highlights. For instance, our all funds revenue for the first quarter came in at 26 million, which is about 13.7% of the amended budget. Conversely, the expenditures totaled about just under 52 million, plus additional encumbrances. So we're about 23% of expenditures committed through the first quarter. That pattern is fairly typical, and we've discussed this in the past in the first quarter report because of the timing of some of our major revenues, such as property and sales tax. Also, with our new financial system, I would note we're more on top, if you will, of encumbering funds through purchase orders and contracts at the time that they're approved and committed. So those are reflected as not available for other purposes throughout the year. Likewise, the general fund is so far tracking relative to budget. We also note in the staff report that, and I should highlight this, should there anticipate any questions, that as noted in, for instance, table 2 of the report on page 4, the adopted all funds budget reflected appropriations of 192.3 million. The amended budget as of September 30th reflected appropriations of 223 million. The amendments to the budget really fall under essentially 3 categories. One is funds that were encumbered at the end of the fiscal year that we just reported on with the audit. By council resolution, when you adopt the budget, those encumbered appropriations are rolled over into the current fiscal year to support the contracts and the work that's continuing. Also, on September 22nd, when we brought the unaudited financial report, we also recommended and council approved supplemental budget appropriations of $14.3 million. So those were unencumbered funds, primarily from capital projects that were funded and budgeted in the prior fiscal year, but where we didn't have contracts and commitments in place, but we sought council authority to roll those over. And then kind of the smaller component of budget amendments, and they're listed also on page 4 and 5 of the staff report, just over 600,000, which represent supplemental appropriations approved by the council since the adoption of the budget. So when staff comes before council on any given council meeting night to award contracts and or accept grants where we provide supplemental appropriations. The last thing I'll say just about that is and they're sort of embedded in table 3 of the staff report, where we show the adopted and the amended budget by department. There's also, since the council adopted the budget, I believe on June 2nd for this fiscal year, as you're aware, we've since implemented the new financial system. There's been some reorganization and restructuring, changing of the chart of accounts. And so there was some adjustments to appropriations that didn't have a net impact. They net out to zero. But for instance, our risk manager division transferring from the city manager's office to human resources, how we're budgeting for things like workers' comp and liability funds. We've made some adjustments internally to the budget to properly place them where they were intended to be. And so those are reflected in some of the changes between the adopted and the amended budget. It's essentially housekeeping, but it was fairly significant, so worth noting in this report. I'll conclude by simply saying that as has been the practice, the mid-year report with results through the first 6 months of the year, which will be coming up here at the end of the calendar year, generally comes to council either at your second meeting in February, potentially first meeting in March. Not only will that report provide revenue and expenditure results through the first 6 months, but that's when we will also be updating projections for the remainder of the fiscal year based on the 6 months of information. That will give us more of a kind of a refresh of the crystal ball in terms of how things are going overall, where we believe we're heading, and where we would hope to end the fiscal year, and in a significant way really inform the kickoff of our budget process for the 26-27 fiscal year based on where our revenues and expenditures are tracking and resulting fund balances. One thing I will also note, maybe dovetailing the previous item and this item, I'd be remiss if I didn't also note that within the general fund, we ended the year and we are maintaining a fund balance that is somewhat in excess, but meets the council's reserve policy that was increased to 15% last year. Any excess fund balance pending future action from the city council per the policy continues to be assigned in the financial statements to the categories that were identified in our reserve policy, primarily deferred maintenance, of which streets and roads is a component part, unfunded liabilities and that, but those will be recommendation for specific use of those funds would be coming to the council with the annual budget process. I think we allocated about $6 million in this year's budget for those purposes out of excess fund balance. We have a little bit less this time around, but wanted to note that. So with that, I'll turn it back to the mayor for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Kurtz, go ahead.
I have just a short question. Thank you for the update. It's always good just to sort of like, whew, we're on progress here. In terms of the tracking, I know when we did the budgeting last time, we talked about where do the homeless funds for homeless, the ERF funds and everything, and I think they moved under city managers. Is that still the case? And then going forward, as our continued expenses around homeless supports, are we going to call that out differently, or are they going to be within which department would they sit in?
So yes, they are currently, and I think plan to continue for the time being in the city manager's office. There's actually a community services division within the city manager's office, and that's where the ERF Campman Resolution Fund grants from the state are. That's also where the county grants would flow through, and expenses when we get into projects, some of that will be reflected probably in the capital fund as well, in the capital projects division.
I think just as we go forward, it would be helpful to have that designation, just because there's going to be a lot going through very quickly.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? I just have one building. I know Director Miller already asked it, but just, and maybe it's premature, on the gas tax, because are there other, she had said that there aren't any changes in the gas tax. I didn't know, as people started to do EVs or maybe do transit or drive less, that we'd start to see a diminishment in that, which we heavily depend on for the pavement program, or any other, these other outside funding sources that you're seeing changes in.
So specific to the gas tax, made a note of that during the presentation. So
Okay.
we'll make sure we highlight that when we update our projections. I would say historically, the gas tax revenues have been much more a function of gasoline prices
Okay, that's
than,
helpful. And usage.
I mean,
Okay.
it's obviously a combination, but when you see spikes and dips, it's correlated to gasoline prices. I would say maybe anecdotally, in some recent discussions we've been having with the planned closure of some refineries here in across the state, but particularly in the northern part of the state, they do anticipate some increases in gas prices. So there's a double-edged sword with, hey, gas tax revenues is looking good, but the prices at the pump is what's driving that.
No, that's helpful. And I think, appreciate having the Q1 budget update when we come back for Q2, those trends, those kind of macro indicators, I think are helpful. I know they're helpful for me, and I'm sure they're probably helpful to the community as well. Okay. Oh yeah, Councilmember Kurtz, go ahead.
In terms of the Medicare and Medicaid changes that are anticipated to be coming, any thoughts yet on how that might impact our ambulance funding?
Honestly, I'm not sure I'd venture a guess on that, but that's probably also something that we will take into account. So we'll have to take a look at that.
Okay.
See how that is. I might offer, there's another, I guess, somewhat positive. You mentioned the funding support for the homeless. I think we're scheduled to come to the subcommittee and or the full council shortly with an update on funding plans for the SAFE team program. That has been benefiting from sustained revenues coming to the city from the statewide opioid settlements, which you'll recall is one of the layers of funding. So while those revenues continue to come in, it bodes well for our ability to cobble together additional funding for that program and others like it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I'll open up the public comment on this item. If you'd like to provide any input or comments or thoughts on the first quarter budget, now is your opportunity. Not seeing anyone who'd like to comment, I will close the public comment and bring it back to the council for any additional comments and then a motion. Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. Thank you, Director Navazio, for this report. Just want to acknowledge you've been now with the city for just under 2.5 years, and this is one of the things that you recommended when you first came in, is that we have these quarterly examinations, which I really appreciate. On face value, it's a check-in at the quarter, but I think it allows for discussion for the benefit of the public and for the council to interrogate a couple of things, if you will accept that word, and give us senses of where things are trending well and not well, that might influence how we think, but otherwise keep a close look. I would call out a couple of things that were, I will say, between your words, which is that revenues that you called out on property tax and even sales are assessed in lumpy ways. And I'll explain what I mean by lumpy, which is they come in at different times of the year that don't always align up with exactly how we spend. And so I appreciate that if a person might look at the budget to say that you are spending over a quarter of our budget is appropriate at this point. I know you've said this before, but I appreciate the direct insight to where we are and where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, Councilmember Hill, would you like to make a motion after your comments?
Sure. I move that we accept the fiscal year 2025-2026 first quarter budget update, presenting revenue and expenditure results through the first quarter of the fiscal year 2025 to 2026 on through September 30th of 2025 in attachment A.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy. Aye. Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Jens Galati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Director Navazio, for all of your work. Thank you. So before we adjourn the meeting, we have open time for public expression. This is any comments from the public on topics that were not on tonight's agenda. Now is your opportunity. You're welcome but not required to say your name and what part of San Rafael you live in.
Ken Dickinson, I live in San Rafael Meadows. Mayor, council members, staff, I respectfully request you move the open time for public expression back to the beginning of the agenda where it used to be and where you will find it at most other city and county meetings, including our own county of Marin. Or at least as a compromise, move it to the middle. This will remove the public perception, warranted or not, that you are intentionally chilling public participation. I will say that again, intentionally chilling public participation. I was looking at the organizational chart in tonight's package, and it shows the mayor and the city council, the city attorney, and the city clerk all reporting to the electorate, all of us. So even more reason to consider this request. Also, I would like to refer back to a comment from the city attorney about the use of video and those things underneath there, the captions, to support the minutes. If we are to rely on video for context and memory, given we all live very busy lives with overwhelming demands on our time, then can we at least have an easily accessible caption file available as they have at the Marin County Supervisors meeting, posted for anyone to have access to alongside the video without needing to request it? These would then be those older verbatim minutes the gentleman referred to, the best of all possible worlds, I would say. If someone were to say the cost prohibits it, I can make a transcript of this meeting instantly using my voicemail iPhone app. The technology is now available. The cost is free to affordable. All that is lacking is for you to agree to the proposal, which I respectfully request that you so do. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the council before we adjourn this evening?
Frank Mason in San Rafael. I want to speak to you again directly, Mayor Kate, because through the 350 Marydale process, I've learned some disturbing, important things, I guess, however you want to look at it. Many groups and neighbors have contacted me about how they were treated by you in the city of San Rafael. From what I've learned, once you took over from your predecessor, all public advisory groups and committees were dissolved. And just like with 350 Marydale, citizens have been told after the fact what you've been going to do. Feeling blindsided, like decisions were being forced on them with little or no impact on the outcome. Mayor, I have to ask you again, why? Why can't the people of San Rafael have a real voice in city projects and decisions? What is the fear allowing citizen input? I urge you to reinstate citizen advisory panels for all of the city's decisions and projects. Yes, this may slow things down or be more complicated, but that is exactly the point of citizen participation. If you don't want citizen input, don't pretend you do. When 350 Marydale was introduced, it was presented as a cooperative venture with the neighboring community. That was simply not true. I also ask that you seriously consider my earlier call to action, which came at the end of my last one, it didn't work. Create a committee for the homeless tiny homes project with a real citizen contribution and decision-making power. I would personally love to take part and dedicate my time to making this change happen. I don't want to keep coming here to only recount failures and disappointments. I want to come here to celebrate a city government that works with its citizens. Please give your citizens a chance, and please give me a chance to help correct the wrongs created from this. Together, we can rebuild trust and make San Rafael a city
Thank
where
you
we
for
all
your
feel
comments.
proud to
If
be
you could
part of.
wrap up. Thank
Thank
you. Anyone else? And we don't normally comment, but I will point out that we have a boards and commissions that are available to folks who want to apply for them, and those meetings are available to everyone. So you can find all that information on the internet, on the webpage. Thank
Good
you.
evening. Hi, and thanks for this opportunity. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Herb Moran. I'm a 65-year resident of San Rafael, presently residing at 316 Jewel Street. I'm here representing the residents of our block. We are respectfully requesting that the city abandon designating the north side of the 300 block as a no parking zone. Little context, this is the third time the 15 years that I've lived there that this has been part of the process. It was pretty transparent the previous two times. We met with Nader Mansourian. He agreed that it was not necessary. Most recently, Mary Skarsgård, I believe is I think is her name, with the San Rafael Fire Department as part of the wildfire prevention program. Ultimately, it was decided it was not needed. And then most recently, a letter from Fahad Fari, and I mispronounced his name, I apologize. That started in August. We went back and forth several times. He advised me essentially that there was a committee comprised of the San Rafael Fire Department, Police Department, Planning, Traffic, and they decided that this was a necessary thing. Just to put some context in it, most recently I sent a letter asking for copies of the minutes, some kind of context as to why this was occurring, what the rationale was. Coincidentally, there was a meeting with the San Rafael Fire Department online. They said, no, the 300 block has nothing to do with the program, which was curious because that was one of the participants in the meeting. There's unanimity amongst the block that nobody wants this change to be had. And most importantly, I think it's a safety issue. As you may be aware, if you're aware of the demographics or the logistics of San Rafael, that's the entryway to Coleman School. So each day there's a bunch of young kids that come over that hill. And I think that having traffic on both sides or cars parked on both sides is a natural buffer to that. And there was a close call a couple of years ago in which a San Rafael police member actually pulled a kid out of the street. So anyway.
If you could wrap up.
Yeah, I just thank you for your consideration and hopefully like to see an actual rationale behind it. Thank you.
And if you could give your contact information to the
I already
city
did.
clerk so she can pass it to city staff so you can have a conversation. Yeah, thank you. Any other comments? Not seeing any, this meeting is adjourned.